All right, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. Townhall session begins right now, live from the Panari Hotel along Mombasa Road. We're having a very important conversation. It's about tobacco regulation, and I'll give you the startling statistics in just a bit. 8 million people die every year. We're talking about this just about 8 days to the World No Tobacco Day, and I'll explain to you what that means in just a bit. But let me introduce my panelists real quick. They're experts on this conversation. Starting from my farthest right, there is Dorcas Kiptui, the head of Division of Tobacco Control at the Ministry of Health. Thank you so much for making time. Robert Mwangi is also here. He's a throat cancer survivor and also an author. He will tell us his story, where it started and how he got to where he is today. And if there's one information message he can give the person out there who might be smoking or using tobacco, he will give that information in just a bit also. And Nancy Gashoka is here. She's the chairperson, Tobacco Control Board. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, the Ministry of Health is tonight revealing very shocking statistics on how children as young as 7 years are being introduced to tobacco. So the ministry now says that proper control measures at home needs to be implemented to prevent children from accessing tobacco. The revelation is coming even as the world gears up to celebrate the World No Tobacco Day on the 31st of May, 2022. Miriam Nyambura has more on this.
They smoke away, oblivious of the health risks involved. But perhaps more worrying to the Ministry of Health are minors who are being introduced to tobacco smoking. New data showing that children as young as 7 years in Kenya are being exposed to tobacco in their homes. So much so that if guidelines are not instituted at the core of the families, in this case the home, then these children could be at a risk of respiratory and cardiac diseases.
In our data collection, many people have reported starting at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10. They may try at 7 years, they are caught, they are beaten, but in 1 year, they will be looking for it and their mind remembers.
If I am a smoker and I'm sitting next to members of the family, for every 10 sticks I smoke, they have smoked 5.
Kiptui, who spoke during a media engagement forum in Machakos, says the mean age accessing tobacco stands at 21. But even so, the age gap needs to be revised upwards to lock out the young ones, who are seemingly the target by industry players.
There were sweets that were manufactured and called cigarette sweets, and they were packaged to look like cigarettes. Who do you think it was targeting? And it was a way of informing children that there is a cigarette. They start by smoking sweets or pretending to be smoking sweets, and the next thing they are looking for the cigarette itself. Statistics
from the Global Adult Tobacco Survey revealed that tobacco kills an estimated 8 million people a year. Half of the tobacco-related deaths occurring between age 30 and 69. In the country, 2.5 million Kenyans accounting for 11.5% use tobacco. A survey conducted revealed that 50% of smokers attempt to quit smoking. By exposing children to tobacco, the effects such as respiratory infections, sudden infant death cannot be downplayed. The survey also revealing that 86.1% of adults who visit nightclubs are exposed to tobacco smoke are second-hand smokers. As the world prepares to mark World No Tobacco Day on 31st May, the Ministry of Health says child protection is vital and more laws need to be enacted to keep children safe. Miriam Nyambura, Citizen TV.
Rather startling statistics there by Miriam Nyambura, and that was brought in by the Ministry of Health. Let me bring in my guests now. And Dorcas, I'll start with you on this. How did we get here, and what was the most startling finding from the report according to you?
Actually, the report that we are talking about, we are in the stage where we are writing the report, and we will launch the full report on the World No Tobacco Day, 31st of May. So we look forward to the statistics. This was a study undertaken among university students in Kenya. And I think the most startling finding so far that I can talk about now is that the current tobacco users, or people who have ever used, students who have ever used tobacco products, the youngest age when they started was, or tried even, was the age of 7 years.
And this, they were exposed by their parents? Or
their
what?
Friends, their parents, a relative. And so the youngest age was 7 years that we found. And the average age for university students who are starting to use tobacco now is 21 years. And we believe that this has gone up because of the Tobacco Control Act.
Is it not sufficient, the Tobacco Control Act?
Pardon?
Is the Tobacco Control Act sufficient in dealing with these rising cases of tobacco use?
Yes, the Tobacco Control Act is very comprehensive, and it is based on the framework, World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. This is a global treaty that Kenya signed and ratified in 2004. And it is a global legislation, and each country is expected to domesticate it because according to our constitution and the nature of a treaty is that when a country or a state ratifies, it is obligated to implement its provisions, and it is domesticated by countries through a national legislation.
Okay.
So Kenya signed in 2004 and domesticated it through the Tobacco Control Act in 2007. So this act has provisions to prevent tobacco consumption and to control the sale and distribution and marketing of tobacco products. It also has a provision to support farmers to transition to healthy and profitable livelihoods, so that as we continue to control tobacco, and then also the farmers who are growing tobacco are facilitated to transition to other livelihoods.
Okay, and we have some farmers in the audience here, and they'll talk to us in just a bit. But let me bring in Robert on this. Robert, what is your story? How did you get exposed to tobacco use, and how did you get here, where we are right now?
Well, Trevor, I started smoking when I was a teenager. It used to be a pleasure. And as I continued to smoke, I didn't know that it is a very addictive drug that I had engaged myself in. So as I continued smoking, I started with 1 cigarette, but I ended up smoking up to 20 cigarettes per day as I continued to grow. When I was in school, at least, I was not smoking much because I could not even afford. By the moment I completed school, got employed, now I could afford to buy even a packet of cigarettes. I continued smoking until I was diagnosed with larynx cancer in the year 2003, which was caused by my smoking habits. The doctors told me they will treat it because it is in its early stage through radiation, which I went through 33 sessions of radiation. And after that, I thought the cancer was gone. But unfortunately, 7 years later, my cancer recurred. And now this time the doctors said they had no choice but to remove the whole voice box, which was done in the year 2010. December.
All right. And did you try to stop at any given point from the time when you were a teenager and you were introduced to smoking? Was there a point where you said, okay, now I want to stop smoking, and how was that journey?
Oh yes, I remember I stopped smoking when I started playing football, and I stopped smoking for 5 good years. But the urge came back, and I found myself smoking once again. So this is because of the addictive nicotine, which I could not resist. But when immediately I stopped playing football, that is when I found myself going back into cigarettes. And all you need to understand is, even if you stop smoking for 5 years or 10 years, then you smoke another 1 cigarette, you find yourself going back to the habit once more.
All right. And let me bring in Nancy on this. Nancy, what measures has the Tobacco Control Board taken to reverse the high rates of tobacco and nicotine products in the country?
The Tobacco Control Act is all about stopping this addictive nature of tobacco and nicotine products. The Tobacco Control Act limits parents to smoke near their children or in their family car, or to set children to buy for them. The Tobacco Control Act limits the advertisement, promotion, and sponsorship of the manufacturers and the importers to advertise, because that attracts children.
Yeah.
The Tobacco Control Act also acts on the pricing, and we want to protect children and families because the exploitation is through addiction, just like we have heard from Robert. Since tobacco product is highly addictive, we want to stop anyone from getting into that addiction, because the manufacturer and the importer and all those people, they exploit that addiction, because that product is highly addictive. It's just like any other narcotics. Yeah. So when one starts, they cannot stop, but the law stops anyone from doing those things. Mm-hmm. You cannot sell single stick. Yeah. It is prohibited. Shisha is banned, and other products of that addictive nature like tobacco, they are all banned by the Ministry of Health through the Tobacco Control Act. And so as a Tobacco Control Board, our work is to regulate and control its demand and also supply. Yeah. And that's why Kenya is a signatory of Framework Convention for Tobacco Control, like my colleague has said. And so this law is international, and it's also local. And that's why you cannot also smoke in public places. You cannot smoke in matatu. And it started with the airplanes. Yeah. No one smokes in the airplane. And therefore, no one should smoke in a public place, not in a hotel, not in a restaurant, not at home, not in the car, because we want to protect the children from getting into it. Because when they get in there, they become lifetime consumers of tobacco, and it becomes very hard to stop, like Robert has said. And so, since it kills the many millions that we have talked about, we therefore find it not so good for people to continue attracting the youth to smoke in diverse ways, either the cigarette or the nicotine pouch or electronic, and all those products. The Tobacco Control Board is mandated to regulate all that. But
have these regulations been effective, essentially, or are people still getting exposed? What are the gaps that you see?
The regulations and the Tobacco Control Act has been effective. That's why you don't see billboards advertising tobacco products. That's why you don't see it in any media, on the TV or elsewhere. That's why you don't see posters. That's why we limit that you cannot smoke near children or in schools. And the law has been effective. But of course, there are those people who blatantly break the law. And we believe the enforcement officers will continue arresting as many as possible, so that this law, since this law is a protection for health and public health, then many more people don't get into that pool of starting to smoke and getting to the predicament that Robert got into. And the government stops spending so much money on respiratory diseases, cancers, reproductive diseases, and many others that we will hear from our expert doctors. So this law has been effective. But there are those who continue to break the law.
But Robert, when you're exposed to smoking, did you know the risks, and did it deter you in any way?
Unfortunately, during our days, we thought smoking is the in thing. We thought you cannot get a girlfriend if you are not a smoker. That is what was put into our thinking. Therefore, nobody knew that it had dire consequences. Because if one would know the consequences of using tobacco products, he would stop. worst enemy to go through the same pain, because it is not easy to go through what I went through the radiotherapy sessions, the stigma of losing my voice. Some people even thinking you are deaf because you are not talking, until I got this machine. Otherwise, without this machine, I cannot produce any voice. So this gadget is the one that assists me, and it is a very expensive gadget. It uses batteries, which also cost me money every other day. So the consequences of using tobacco products are so dire that one would wish he never or she never ever started smoking or using them.
Okay. Dorcas, what are the patterns of consumption in terms of regions, and are there areas bearing greater burden than others?
Thank you very much. In Kenya, we have 2.5 million adults consuming tobacco products regularly. Majority of them are men. At 19.5% of men in Kenya consume tobacco products, and the main product that they consume is manufactured cigarettes. And 4.5% of women in Kenya consume tobacco products. And maybe that number is conservative for women because the stigma associated with women who consume tobacco products is high, and therefore many of them might not tell the truth. But among the youth aged 13 to 15 years, about 10% of those youth who are in, let's say, class 7, grade 7, 8, and Form 1 and 2 consume tobacco products. And it is actually in equal numbers between boys and girls, and that is really a big problem that we need to address quickly, and we continue to address it. And we continue to monitor tobacco consumption in the country through various surveys, national surveys, and this is the Global Adult Tobacco Survey, the Global Youth Tobacco Survey, the STEP survey, which is a survey of risk factors for non-communicable diseases, which tobacco consumption is a major risk factor. These diseases include cancer. It includes cancer of all parts of the body.
Yeah.
It includes cardiovascular diseases. These are diseases of the heart and the blood vessels. And also diseases of the lungs, including chronic obstructive airway disease, where the structures of the lungs are damaged to a point that somebody is not able to use their lungs, or the lungs stop functioning. And also asthma. It can lead to bronchitis, and also it can make worse cancers, asthma, or trigger asthma among people who live or work in areas where people consume tobacco products.
Yeah.
And so in Kenya, currently we see also the non-communicable diseases are on the rise, and this is most likely due to tobacco consumption among people who started early, because the effects of tobacco occur from immediate to up to 25 years or 30 years from the date of consumption, so, or exposure to secondhand tobacco smoke, for example. So it takes a long time, and the measure for effects of tobacco in health sector are non-communicable diseases. Also reproductive health conditions like reduced libido, infertility among both male and female. You can have women who consume tobacco and they're pregnant. They have a problem getting pregnant, and if they get pregnant, either they get a miscarriage, and if they carry the pregnancy to term meaning to the 9 months period, just a period of gestation, they either have a stillborn baby, that is a baby who is not alive, or they can have a baby with very low birth weight, and that baby will have long-term effects.
Yeah.
It can also cause congenital malformations. These are conditions that occur in the uterus when the baby is growing. And so tobacco affects not only the health of the people, but also the community. Because if you have someone who is sick in your household, and many of the people who get sick are very productive people,
yeah,
and many of the people who die from tobacco consumption and exposure to tobacco smoke are people who are most productive. There are premature deaths occurring among people who are between 30 and 69 years. So those are very productive people in the country.
Yeah.
And so if you have these people dying, most of them are breadwinners or providers in the community, and they are also the manpower of the country. So it threatens the development and socio-economic development of not only the household, but also the country.
Yeah. Before I bring in the audience and to ask you questions and give their comments, please demystify this concept. There's always been an argument that tobacco itself, the plant, is not as harmful as the synthetic material that is sometimes used to wrap it up and then as you smoke. Is that true from the Ministry of Health perspective?
There is no safe form of use. All forms of tobacco consumption are harmful.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the tobacco plant is not only harmful to the grower, it is also harmful to the environment. When you go to tobacco growing areas, which I happen to have visited, and I was very surprised. I had never seen such a plant that grows really, it's leafy, it's green, looks very healthy, but it consumes the nutrients of the soil. That if you grow tobacco on a farm over a period of time, it just exhausts the nutrient of the soil.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, from the seedling, it is grown near water bodies, because you need to really put a lot of water into it. And also they put a lot of chemicals to nourish it, and also to prevent any infections of the plant, the crop. And they grow it along the rivers and water bodies. So these chemicals all are washed down into the river where the water people consume, and also aqua life dies, and is fish also we eat. So it is the same poisoning, not only to the soil but also to the water.
Yeah.
And to cure tobacco, the tobacco farmers harvest a lot of trees, tons and tons of trees.
Yeah.
And it causes deforestation. And if you go to tobacco growing areas, you will see how bare the land is. And you will see also the amount of labor that goes into the community, into the household. And most of these farmers really, they are small-scale farmers. And so you can imagine the amount of expense to the household on health, on economic, and also social, because people end up having a lot of children or many wives to be able to provide labor for the tobacco growing. So tobacco does not only affect health, but also environment, also the society, the social, it has social effects and also economic effects, because on the government part, the government spends a lot of money to treat the externalities or the effects of tobacco, especially non-communicable diseases, which are a really big problem in this country at the moment.
Yeah. Nancy, you spoke about the rules and regulations.
Yes.
So what more have you put in place to deal with the tobacco menace now? And what is the plan going forward? What more are you going to put in place?
Okay, thank you. The Tobacco Control Act came into being in 2007.
Yeah.
And we have tobacco control regulations, which came into 2014. Unfortunately, when the tobacco control regulations came into being, the tobacco manufacturers took the Ministry and Tobacco Control Board and the Attorney General to court to stop the regulations. We went ahead and we were in court until 2019, up to Supreme Court, just to protect the health of Kenyans. We went ahead to ban shisha, just in an attempt to protect the health of Kenyans. So ours is a public health protection, especially for coming generations. Because if we don't stop the young people being introduced, the children being introduced, families consuming tobacco and tobacco products, then this cycle will continue on and on and on.
Yeah.
But we have a dream as Tobacco Control Board that since the Tobacco Control Act was signed in 2007, passed through Parliament in 2007, we have a generation who are turning now 15 years old. And since we stopped the advertisement, the promotion, the sponsorship, you remember in the past, the tobacco manufacturers would sponsor soccer, they would sponsor the music festival or the Kenyan drama festival, but we stopped all that. In fact, the law is broken at times when they sponsor the safari rally. That is against the law. And when people set children to buy single sticks, that's against the law. And when people smoke anywhere and everywhere, that's against the law. They should be arrested. So our dream as Tobacco Control Board is that we will have a tobacco-free generation. Anyone born after 2007, we hope that they have not seen any billboard. We hope that they have not seen anything to do with sponsorship and promotion. We believe that the tobacco manufacturers will adhere to the prescription. We give graphic health warnings and pictorial health warnings that on the packet, there's a picture on a graphic health warning showing the cancers, like our brother here suffered, the cancer of the mouth or the eyes, the amputations, the lungs. We would like it to be printed on the packet.
Yeah.
On both sides with clear warning. And we follow that very, very closely.
Okay.
We also stop sale at point of sale in a supermarket. We would not want anyone to put cigarettes there. They would have to be kept somewhere else, and you ask for them so that we can limit the age. We also stop, the law also stops, just selling them anywhere and everywhere. They must be sold in designated places. So in the final analysis, we are moving towards a certain direction. We would want plain packaging. Plain packaging is, there's nothing, there's only a warning.
Yeah.
It is plain paper so that nobody is attracted to it. Other countries have done that like that. Australia has done that. And other countries have moved on to that kind of a law.
Yeah.
New Zealand has a free generation that is coming. And Kenya, we are moving in very, very closely to do that kind of a regulation.
Okay.
But to begin with, we want to just educate all the members of the public in Kenya to understand the dangers. But then the law is following very closely.
Okay. I'd like to hear from your views as well on this discussion we're having right now. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, we're still talking about this same conversation. Here's what's coming up.